Today we have a very special guest joining us, Chad Peters. Chad is a professional geologist with over 10 years of exploration and production experience in the US and Canada. Prior to co-founding Ridgeline Minerals in 2018, Chad was managing member of the Premier Gold Mines Limited exploration team responsible for the discovery of over 10 million ounces of gold. Chad and I get into a variety of topics tonight, including starting a company during the pandemic, the importance of being transparent with shareholders, and more. Thanks again for joining us on The Rocks. Let's dive in. So Chad, thanks for joining me tonight for On The Rocks. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Emily. I'm doing pretty good. It's a good excuse to have a bourbon and actually still do some work stuff. So
right, both. Now, what are you drinking tonight?
I kept it pretty boring. I got an old fashioned with a couple cherries and I'm using Colonel E.H. Taylor small batch.
Oh.
So that was
and why?
Go ahead.
You picked that one.
My wife did a very 2020 birthday present, turned 34 in November, and she got me a huge cocktail kit. So some awesome bourbon, some awesome small batch spiced rum too, and then all the fixings for making, all the fancy cocktails and stuff. So been putting it to good use.
So at least you mix it with stuff. I just drink it literally on the rocks. It's been one of those years, right?
Yeah, it has been one of those years. Depends on the day. If it's been a really tough one, it's usually just on the rocks. But yeah, good old doesn't hurt too.
That's what. So tonight I'm drinking Noah's Mill, which my COO John actually gifted me for Christmas. But I picked it for two reasons. One, it's the highest proof on my bar, so I thought wrap up 2020. And number two, the Willett Distillery, I found it was interesting. They became well known because they actually helped save the bourbon industry in Kentucky. When the industry took a nosedive, they started doing things a little different. They didn't distill it themselves. They bought a lot of other bourbons from the area they're in Kentucky and barreled them and sold them. So it actually helped the rest of the industry make it out alive from an industry downturn. I thought that was appropriate because you guys at Ridgeline are doing such cool stuff and doing things quite differently than a lot of the rest of the industry.
Wish we were making bourbon, but we're finding it gold too. So
yeah, so 2020 has been an interesting year. So tell us a little bit about what you guys have been up to this year and how you're doing things differently given all the craziness.
Yeah, no, it's been a pretty up and down year for sure. I mean, we started, I think this time last year I had 200,000 US in the bank. And so we were, felt like we were on the rocks, pun intended. And, no, we raised some money in the spring, had all these big grand plans to IPO in April and, we did our tech reports, everything. And then COVID hit and literally our bankers, our underwriters just called and said, hey, IPO's off. And I was like, what? Kind of like, it's off? And they're like,
does that happen?
Yeah, COVID. Yeah, everything's, and this is literally like a 2-minute phone call. Like to them, it was like they had, I think, 10 other deals that they were working their way through, but they just called. And so it was a crazy year. The IPO got called off. Not that we'd been marketing it heavily, but we were right at I think we were going to launch it in like a week and we ended up delaying it, which worked out okay because we ended up doing some good exploration work at our Selena project, showed some potential there. And so we IPO'd in August instead and raised $5 million right into a much better gold market as well. So we kind of got lucky with timing and stuff, but it's been a weird year. Like I bought a travel trailer for my crew just so they wouldn't have to stay in hotels, right? So instead of the normal thing in Nevada, right, usually you're an hour's drive from the nearest hotel, maybe an hour and a half to the project. And we just literally pulled our travel trailers out to the project. It was actually kind of fun. We'd go map, do whatever, have a couple beers and a burger at night, and it was a good time. But it was a really kind of a weird start to the company as a public company too. So
yeah, and to have everything happen so fast, I'm sure that was. I mean, you couldn't miss a whole like summer season, right? So you had to figure something out. What are we going to do this year?
Well, that was it. We knew that we were, okay, the IPO got delayed. If we don't do anything, if we just sit on our hands and wait for this COVID to pass, it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? You end up with dwindling away your treasury anyways. And so we decided we weren't going to, we were going to be aggressive with our exploration heading into the IPO and stuff. And so that's how kind of some of the things we did. We got the drilling contract, which, that's been right from the founding of the company, our strategic contract. So that was a huge thing for, our equity or founding partner of the company owns a drilling company. So we were able to drill incredibly cheap, which kept our costs down during, we weren't sure if we were going to IPO or not. And then we did little things like tried to get creative. We approached the lab and said, well, what if we prepay you $75,000 upfront? In return, we want to get priority lab service until that 75 grand disappears. And just little things like that, because we kind of saw that bottleneck coming with everybody raised a bunch of money in July and August. And we thought, oh man, it's going to be brutal to get assays in the fall. So those are some of the things that we did to try to, I guess, make better odds, I guess, going into what is already pretty risky business, right? So.
And that's, for those of the folks listening who maybe aren't familiar with the mining industry or are new to it, like it's pretty unique that you have a drilling company as a founder, as a partner in your company, right? That's not the norm.
No, it's definitely not norm. I've seen maybe, probably 2 or 3 elsewhere, that I know of worldwide, kind of thing that have done that. It's tricky, right? Because I think the only way it works for us, I'd worked with Steve and been, he'd worked for me drilling off our discovery that our team made when I was with Premier in Nevada, right? So I'd known him for 7 or 8 years, trusted the guy. And I think that's part of the reason that only way it works, because, drilling is such a, you can have a hole go bad and, it can end up costing $200,000 and you don't even get down a target, right? So, if you were trying to do that contract with just someone that you didn't have a close relationship with, they're going to fleece you regardless, right? Kind of thing. Whereas Steve, we've known each other for so long, we were able to go back and maybe that 200 grand turns into, okay, what was your cost? Well, it cost me 70. Okay, then I'll cut you a check for 70. And that's the way we've been doing it. So yeah, it's pretty unique. And I think it's what allowed us to raise the money in the early days.
So why do you think more companies don't do that or have their own internal drilling capability?
I think, not a lot of, I guess maybe one of the things that's a little bit different with kind of how we got started is I founded the company with Steve out of my garage, right? So we were able to define the share structure and how we were going to run the company right from the very start. And in reality, very few companies actually start clean like that and work their way through private financings and still able to maintain that structure, right? So we were very lucky, we tied in with Dave Elliott, Andy Williams, Paul Stevens, a lot of really great guys that I was lucky enough to get introduced to, and that allowed us to maintain that share structure. I think a lot of times, when you pick up I wouldn't say broken, but you say you pick up a project with 100 million shares or a company and you're a new CEO, you don't have that ability to go give out, 5 million more shares to a drilling company, right? You're already diluted. You already have a broken structure. If anything, you're going to do a rollback, right? So I think the only way that structure works is if you have it right from the outset. This is how we're going to run the company. So maybe that worked. Maybe that's why it worked out that way.
Yeah. The other way, you have a lot of baggage. Right?
Well, yeah,
it's hard to do it.
All mining companies have baggage, right? So, but I think that was, to be honest, I did it as much out of, I wouldn't say desperation, but I pretty much, I quit my job full time with Premier. I had a great job, great company and all that. And I needed something to have us stand apart, from the rest. There's a million geos out there with a great idea. And most of those savvy investors, they've been there, got the t-shirt, and they don't care. So that was purely a way of trying to kind of just set ourselves apart a little bit, something that I could stand on a soapbox and kind of, say, hey, we're different. We may not find any gold just like the rest of them, but we're going to do it cheaper than everybody else.
We'll do it cheaper.
We're going to fail fast. That was, I guess, the mentality, right? I'm not going to guarantee recovery, but we will get there quick.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. And it's a strategic decision that you guys made, right, on how to set yourself apart. And no, it makes a lot of sense. It sounds very startup mentality in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, literally, it was kind of, we could have gotten an office and we ended up just working out of my garage for 15 months and I didn't take a salary for that whole time. Right. So I remember my wife, she's been incredible and she I remember her saying, like, oh, so what do you think? We're going to be funded in 6 months? And I was like, oh, if we're not funded in 6 months, I'm doing something really wrong. And then like 15 months later, I think we closed our business. And she was, she has her own company. So she supported the whole family, kind of thing for 15 months. And, I got offered some really, truly awful deals from bigger groups coming in and saying, well, you know what, we'll take 80% ownership of the company, but we'll give you healthcare and we'll give you a salary. And she said, oh, no, you got to walk from these deals and stuff. So, it worked out well.
Yeah, but it's hard to do sometimes, right? When we have a saying with some of our partners that until you've curled up in the fetal position on the floor at night, trying to figure out how you're going to make payroll, like it's a very different life experience.
Oh, I remember the turning, like the point where I pretty much packed it in was actually Roundup 2019. So I went to Roundup, was all geared up and like, all right, I'm going to get this thing financed. And I got these, I had our land deal solidified with EMX. So I had great projects in hand. And the only thing to get the land deal totally done and ready to go was I had to show I could raise 500,000, right? And I thought, okay, I can get this done. And I went to Roundup, not one person invested. And I and everyone said, I love the story, love the drilling contract. It's too risky. And this was still, when exploration was still pretty rough at that time, right? Like early 2019, no one gave a shit about exploration, deep exploration in Nevada. And I came home and told Carla, like, all right, I'm going to go look for a chief geologist position at a mine or something, like kind of thing. And thought that was it. And then Dave Cole introduced me to Dave Elliott from Haywood, I think. So Dave Cole's the CEO of EMX, and he called up and said, well, you're just packing it in? And I was like, no, I've been unemployed for 14 months. I'm not going to put it in, but I can't get the finance. And he just said, he goes, look, we really believe in it. We want to see it go forward. Like, I'm going to make some calls. And so Dave made some calls and I think I had a call with Dave Elliott about 4 days later, and on the phone, Dave committed $500K to the seed round as a lead order. And I think we raised $1.5 million. All those no's from 2 weeks prior turned into yeses when they found out that Dave Elliott and Dave Cole were writing checks. They said, oh, well, if Dave Elliott's in, I'll put in 30, 40 grand, and we raised $1.5 million in like 5 days. So
it's amazing when, that seed money makes such a huge difference. Right. I mean, a dear friend of mine, Beth Meyer, she was my first check for Prospector. And that was before COVID. And she was the only person who didn't walk away and make that call that you kind of got when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then she stuck with me, and a few months later, we were acquired by Analog. And same thing, the Analog team had seen me build it from day one, knew the story, hugely supportive. I mean, it's that's where those relationships become so incredibly important, right? Whether you're entrepreneurial or in the regular part of the mining space.
No, absolutely. I've being a geo, initially like coming into it, I was like, okay, people are going to see the projects and they're going to be interested, right? I very quickly realized, yes, the projects are an important part of it, but they're really investing, especially at the stage we were at. They're just investing in you, right? They're investing in an idea, and so. It took a lot of, I think, just grinding it out and kind of a lot of long conversations. The funny thing is some of my best investors, the biggest investors, rarely started the conversation with, okay, tell me about the structure, tell me whatever. They didn't care. They wanted to know, what's your family like? Yeah. Do you
nobody wants your body.
No. Yeah, exactly. Like the first half hour was like, do you like dogs? Have you ever kicked a dog?
Yeah.
But like maybe not quite that deep.
They don't invest in dog kickers.
But they just literally just want to know, are you a decent person who's gonna, be spend their money reasonably, right? And that's kind of how we got started. And that's why we've really stuck with the structure of the company the way we have, is we're trying to, we've been offered financings, we've been offered, various, as a private company, kind of thing. And financing opportunities have come up, and we walked away because they weren't the right move for the shareholders, right? And so I own just over 8% of the company, kind of thing. And I've put 150 grand of my own money into the company. So between going without a salary and the cash we've put in, this is the biggest investment I've ever done in my life. Right. So at 34 years old. So, so I'm pretty motivated and I think a lot of the investors really like that, right? They know that, okay, this, if this doesn't work out for most of these guys, it's just another X on their spreadsheet. No big deal. Doesn't work out for me. I'm back to the, logging core somewhere in a shack in Nevada. Right. So, pretty motivated to try to get it to work.
No, I think, that's a really interesting point, because when I sit through mining company pitches, it's, a lot of the companies they stand out because they talk about the percentage that's owned by management.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's actually a differentiator for the mining industry, that if investors are new to the industry, they should look for, right? They should look to see, is management invested, and at what level are they invested in the company? Because I think it is rather unique.
Yeah, there's nothing more scary than a CEO that has 5 million options and hasn't bought one share on the market, right? That's a clear sign that the guy's not very aligned, right? So
yeah, no skin in the game.
Yeah, we've tried to do that. Our whole man, even my it's great. Like my VP exploration, I convinced him to come over from Gold Standard Ventures. I don't know if you remember, they had a pretty big discovery at their Dark Star deposit, and he came over and I was. Pardon?
Great name, by the way.
Well, actually,
Dark Star.
Yeah, and Mike named our Swift. He named our Swift target that we just finished drilling, the Fallen City. So the guy's got a knack for putting names on stuff. So
yeah, it's important.
Yeah, when he came over and joined the company, it was just like literally I just closed the financing, and I said, okay, like really want you to join. I need you to take a $40,000 pay cut. And it would be really great if you could invest in the seed round as well, because we want to send the right message to the shareholders. He kind of looked at me sideways and was like, and I was like, and he said, let me get back to you. And within like 30 minutes, he called back. He goes, yeah, we're in. And so it's been awesome. So he was there since right at the start, and we've been kind of building the team around that since. So.
Well, I think, and especially because the reason why I think that's so important for a non-traditional mining investor, someone who's new to the space, is because oftentimes people are overwhelmed or maybe don't understand all of the technical details around why the project is supposedly the best mine ever, right? The best deposit you'll ever see. And so if you can see that the technical team, that the management team is invested, and to what level they are, and to varying levels, right? Depending on how much they can afford to be invested. But it's a real sign of commitment and belief in the technical virtues of the project. That if you're not 100% confident in your understanding of the technical part of the project, it's a good indicator.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think actually Jamie Keach had a pretty awesome, I think it was that don't presentation he did that said how you got screwed in 2018 or something like that. I probably don't remember the title, but it was a really good, like, I'd always understood, skin in the game and all that. But when you look at how, you look at a group and you go, okay, so the founders got issued 20 million shares at 0.005 cents, kind of thing, and then they go and they IPO and they ask shareholders to come in at 50 cents on an IPO and hold that bag. They've already made 500 times their money, kind of thing, their investment. And so we, right, like we say, you said doing things a bit differently, like right at the start, even we didn't issue founder shares. When Steve and I founded the company, we each got, I think, 100 shares. Right, in the company, just purely from hey, you can't incorporate without at least 100 share, the minimum number. So we split those. Then when we didn't issue any shares until we actually went to the seed round, and I pretty much got on a call with Dave Elliott and Dave Cole and said, okay, what are we worth? And Dave Cole's response was nothing, kind of thing. Because you haven't found anything. I said, okay, thanks, Dave.
The confidence builder.
Well, I mean, they didn't bullshit around, right? Like you just said, he said, you're worth nothing. You're worth what we're willing to pay, kind of thing. And
right.
That was a bit of an eye opener, right? Because I had overvalued the company for way too long. Like I was valuing the company at a couple $1 million because, hey, we got this great drill contract and these great projects. It doesn't matter, right? Like and so
if you have,
so we ended up settling on 750,000 Canadian pre-money. And then our founder shares were calculated based on that. So at 750 and the 12 cent seed round financing, Steve and I got 6.25 million shares. Exactly broke 12 cents. Now for tax reasons, I think if you looked into the taxes, those shares are worth like 0.1 strictly because in the US, if we got given 12 cent shares, that's an unrealized gain. And I would have paid taxes on something that isn't worth anything.
That you haven't actually gotten any money before.
But we could have issued 10 million shares or 15 million shares, and instead we broke it at our actual valuation. We took that at the seed round with the surrounding shareholders, which I think both went over well with those guys. And I think we've kind of tried to maintain that ever since.
So tell me, I mean, you came out of like you said, log and core. I mean, you came up as a geologist. How did you learn the finance side of the business and how you wanted to structure deals and how to negotiate? How did you get into that side?
Well, it's funny. One of my board members just laughingly says that I could sell ice to an Eskimo. So like, I think I got the ability to kind of bullshit from my mom and just kind of be able to that stuff. So I mean, that stuff came naturally from a raising money standpoint. I actually enjoy walking into a boardroom and being like, all right, here's why you should be buying our stuff. But what I surrounded myself by a lot of guys that have done this already. So my CFO Dwayne Lowe, been a part of multiple public companies, started with First Quantum. My advisors board, those kind of folks, I specifically brought in, people that had done it multiple times already, and I just rely really heavily on them. So, I try to just mostly go on gut feel. I still am super green at all this. So, I try to focus on just doing what I think is best from a shareholder perspective. And then my board usually comes in and those guys, that close group will come in and just say, look, we get where you're trying to go with this, or, but you actually need to do it this way, or, but we're able to kind of find a middle ground usually of, I want to make sure that, because I think the worst statement that I hear is this is how it's always been done, especially in like the Vancouver mining, right? Like that's the most dangerous statement in Vancouver is this is how it's always done. So, I think we got offered a deal, where someone wanted to give us a $6 million financing, but would have had to restructure our entire second round, which was already half filled. Right. This guy comes in and says, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of money, but I want you to reprice it. And I want a full warrant that's listed and, a whole bunch of demands and kind of thing. And, that would have brought a lot of money into the treasury, but it would have destroyed our cap structure. Right. So we knew it wasn't. So my board came in, and I said, I don't think this is a good idea. And they were like, no, this will ruin, this will take guys like Dave Elliott and the group that have been behind you. They'll be out the door as soon as this thing's public if you do this kind of deal. So been able to rely on those guys, make sure that we're always trying to do the right thing anyways.
Yeah, I think that's why the board is so important, right? That's another thing for folks to look at when people ask me, how do I know a good mining company from a bad? I mean, other than the geology and the plan to actually develop it, it's the people, and the board can be so important. Even if you have an entrepreneurial person who maybe is new in their role as a CEO, if you've got a really strong board, they can really add value.
No, absolutely. And, I've the other thing I try to do is like, I worked for Ewan Downey for a decade, in the early days, I would call him probably more than he appreciated, and just, So I had a lot of people that were mentors to me or whatever over the years. And between our board and all these folks, I just kind of, in the early days, it was kind of decision by committee. It was like, and it worked out well.
So have you found it difficult in the industry to do things differently? Have you found resistance? Pushback?
Yeah, it actually has been. Yeah. It's been pretty tricky. I think you factor in, if I was a, 50-year-old gray hair that had done it 5 times already and, made everybody a bunch of money. If I came out and said, hey, I want to do things, a little bit differently than normal, you wouldn't have gotten any pushback, right?
Right.
The way we were trying to do things it didn't catch. We weren't able to get a lot of traction in the early days, and it took a guy like Dave Elliott, I think, betting on us more than betting on our team more so than maybe the company in general. I think that was kind of the breaking point for us that got us over the hump, and then we were able to at that point. Then I think every time we've gotten offered maybe a deal that doesn't make sense for us, or because I think we got offered like 7 RTOs prior to the IPO, and every single time it came down to structure, right? Like there was always that skeleton in the closet of, well, we actually got a guy that owns 10 million shares at 0.1 cents, and he happens to hate the chairman, so he's certainly going to blow the stock out. And it's like, well, then why did we do this deal? Like we're not. So
well, we can do it really, yeah.
It's starting to come around now, though. I think we're starting to get some people that are realizing that that we're following through on what we said, and starting to get, now I think if we go back for a financing, in 6 or 8 or 12 months or whatever, I think people are going to be a little, they'll have seen that we've been able to get through a really tough year, still maintain we're back over our IPO price, which I didn't think we'd get to by the end of the year, to be honest. So that's been a positive. So
congrats on that.
Yeah. So we'll see how long it lasts in this. I mean, man, what a we're talking about how crazy 2020's been. Like every week is a different week, right? Like you look at the market and the bankers are going, gold's going to $2,300. And you're like, oh, awesome. This is going to be great. And then, and then literally like 19 minutes later, the stock, gold drops $80. And that same banker is going, it's going to $1,600. You better sell all your shares. And it's like, oh my God, kind of thing. And, that's by the day, by the week, like it's been like that since, the whole year almost. Right. So hoping for a little more stability next year.
Absolutely. But I also think it's 2020 by virtue of how insane it's been has actually opened up a little bit for things to be done differently, right? Because everyone's had to figure out to do things differently. And so a little bit of that resistance, I think, has changed. Even when we were starting to talk about Prospector, we did our beta launch at PDAC this year, and then the whole world changed. And, people were actually interested because they now had to do due diligence and deal flow from home, right? They couldn't meet up with folks to meet in person or go out for cocktails or, do any of the things that they normally did. So they were looking for a new way to do things, which I think has been a long time coming in the industry in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that we could be doing differently that the industry has been slow to adopt.
We're certainly a long ways behind most industries. That's for sure. Like it just feels like even just having, women on mining boards, like how long has that taken to become a thing? And like we're actively looking. I'd love to add the right person to the board and all that kind of stuff, because I just think when you're only dealing with half the population's perspective, and look at the decisions that have been made by male dominant mining teams over the last 20 years. And say
what? I don't know what you're referencing, Chad.
I saw, I think it was John Goodman was, I think his name, from Dundee, and I read that Elephant in the Room podcast. I don't know if you listened to it, and it was incredible because he said all of these groups have gotten so focused on scale. And he said it's destroyed so many good mining projects because guys were focused just like having their jacked up truck. Well, we're going to have the biggest mine in Chile. And it's like, who cares? Instead of doing like, building it and phasing it out and scaling it out so that you continue to de-risk the project, you got the, and part of it is shareholder pressure too, right? Is, shareholders see projects getting huge, right? So, but it's just funny, I think the industry's changing for the better, and, we're trying to lead at least from a, I'd like to think that we're, like you said, we're doing things differently. We're trying to, Moira Smith, for example, is a shareholder, longtime kind of mentor in Nevada and stuff too. And, I love how they're focused on the science, right? Like, and obviously it works. Like they've made a lot of significant discoveries in the Great Basin. And I think too many companies have been, focused mostly on just appeasing shareholders, right? You raise $2 million, which is barely enough to keep the lights on. They go and do a soil survey and a geophysics survey, say that they've discovered a new mineralized ore body. CEO has his office in Vancouver and travels around the world promoting his bullshit stock for a year and then raises another $2 million at the same valuation and rinse and repeat, right? So, that whole fail fast mentality that we kind of pushed was like, look, I'm not going to try to get married to a project and just keep it in the portfolio so we can raise money and pay our salaries, right? We're either going to make a discovery or it's gone, kind of.
Well, that's why I'm a huge fan of companies who are led by people who want to control their own destiny. So whatever that destiny is, like I know when I actually heard you pitch in the mining pitch battle, right? I think it was Mines and Money Connect.
You were my winning vote.
Yes, I was probably the tiebreaker. But one of the many virtual mining conferences we've both been on this year. But it's a big differentiator when the leadership knows how they want to exit a project.
Yes.
Right. Some people want to build a mine, and that's great. I love those projects because I personally love to see that happen. I like to get the pictures of the big equipment showing up on site and digging the big hole. Like it's really exciting. But other people have a clear vision of how they're going to exit through, selling a project or partnering with a bigger company. There are lots of valid options for how you add value and then exit. Yep. Right. But you've got to have that. It can't just be, like you said, I'm going to go raise another $2 million and then
just keep going. Yeah, no. And we I think the big thing for us is like, I've been an underground production geo. I've done PEAs. I led the PEA for Premier's Cove project. Right. And I've done it it's great learning experience, kind of thing. I wouldn't change doing all that stuff, but man, I'm not that great at it. Like, honestly, like I'll be the first, it's a strength to know, what your weaknesses are. And I don't have the patience to shave pennies off of a PEA, right? Like I did it. It was pounding my head against the wall for like a year and a half. And, we took a project at Cove, we made a discovery there, and it turned into being valued at 150 million. So it was really exciting to see that value creation, because it literally went from nothing to in about 2 years to being worth that kind of cash. And so I wanted to be, obviously I didn't want to be the geo making the discoveries anymore, right? Like but I wanted to have a stake in the company. Like I saw very quickly that, I just worked 70-hour weeks for a year and a half straight to make this thing happen, and my company's taking care of me. But at the end of the day, our CEO bought a winery and I'm still driving a Toyota. Why is this, kind of thing. So I wanted to get onto the other side of the business, but really wanted to focus on discovery. So like we felt that, for the minimum, high risk, but for low expenditures, you can see huge returns. And our discovery at our Swift project, or Selena, that we just announced, like that, we've put about 500,000 US into that. And it's, it's a bona fide, open pit silver gold discovery, right? We still have lots of work to do, but if we were able to do that with 500K, what can we get, what can we add in value next year for $1 million? Kind of thing. And so that's where I think huge return we look at it like a business. If we're going to put money into this thing, we better see a potential return out of it for our shareholders, because I'm the largest shareholder and I would like to not drive the Toyota anymore, although Toyota is a great one, kind of thing. But so
we're going to get like hate mail from Toyota.
You're going to get a bourbon sponsorship and I'm going to get hate mail from Toyota. So.
No, but I think what you said is spot on. I got some phenomenal advice from Terry Martell, who's the chairman of the board for VVC Exploration, a company I'm on the board of, and we've got projects in Mexico. And Terry and I were sitting in the airport getting ready to fly out of Mexico together, and he said, my one advice for someone your age, because it will shock you, but I am considerably younger than most of the folks on the board. He said, is to find a way to have a money seat at the table earlier in your life. He said, that's what I wish I'd done, right? Because you can have the best idea, you can put together a great team, but the big difference is whether or not you can bring money to the table. And you can't do that if you don't kind of go out on that limb, right? And figure out how to have skin in the game.
No, exactly. And it may not work out, right? Like, but at least you had the skin in the game. And then the people that I think the big thing that I'm realizing, is not every exploration project's going to work out. Not every company's going to work out. Like it's just, it's just pure statistics, right? Like very few of these things actually turn into massive successes. But I think when you align yourself with the right people, you show that you're willing to put your skin in the game and take that risk, whether it works out or not. A lot of times those same group will call you back up and say, that didn't work out, but I love working with you. So let's spin out this, or let's take the shell of what used to be your company. I'm not saying that's what has happened to us, but, you take that, it's funny. Like I actually talked to one guy and he said, he mentioned a company. He said, and I said, yeah, they went, that's been a huge success. He said, that was 2 broken shells before it became what it is. He said, it's the same core shareholders, but they gave it a try the first one. It didn't work out. No one got pissed off. They just retooled the company, refinanced it, moved on. And it was the third time everybody made their money on it, kind of thing. So I think you're right. Like getting in early. I didn't want to be, I'd seen buddies of mine that were in their 50s and just getting started into what I am doing now with Ridgeline. And they had all of the key, they could have done it in their 30s or 40s, but they had kids and they had, a lot of commitments and stuff. And so luckily, I think really the only reason I was able to do it is my wife is very entrepreneurial herself. So like I went to her and she was like, you know what, you're not happy where you are. And I loved working for Premier, like to be fair, but I was kind of felt in the rut, right? I was now we were a development company. That was, like I said, I was literally shaving pennies off of tons and supposed to get excited about it. And I just couldn't do it. So, she's like, you're not happy. What should we do? And she actually was the one who kind of spurred me we kind of did a little chart and she was like the pros and cons of actually like, what's the negatives of staying here and just riding it out and making a great salary versus coming home every night and just being totally burnt out. Right. And I guess I'm a different kind of burnt out right now, but at least I'm happy and running my own thing.
At least you know your own reasons for being burnt out, right? What I find is similarly, I am only able to do what I do because of the support of my husband. Like Mark is 110% behind me and doubles down whenever I need it and is always pushing me, partly because he wants to have a really big boat one day, right? He's like, we're not going to get the boat I want if we don't have one out of the park, but also because he knows it's what makes me happy, right? To take chances and watch our whole team like deliver stuff that we literally kind of come up with out of nowhere, right? That's the cool part, is to see something go from nothing to a real project, a real team. But it does. You gotta. I always say, being an entrepreneur of any kind is like jumping off a cliff and knitting your parachute on the way down.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy. Because like I wasn't gonna quit my job at Premier, right? And because I was like, okay, I can do both of these, and then what became one of my board members. I told him, he said, you know what? He said, it's disingenuous. You're not doing a service to Premier, and to you and the guys that mentored you and gave you the opportunity to be where you're at right now. You're not really being very genuine to them if you're on the side sourcing projects in the same state you're working. And I was like, no, you're absolutely right. So it came to a point where I just quit Premier completely and started it. And, that was, like you said, that was jumping off the cliff. Cause like I had, literally sold all my equity I'd built in the company over 10 years, which wasn't as much as I would have liked, but it kept the lights on for a while, at the very least. But yeah, no, it's, but I think it does force you also to, when you look at, I think a lot of people realized when they see that you've done that, you haven't, you didn't take the easy route, in our case, quit the job, kind of thing. And I think they gave them that confidence of like, well, this guy's absolutely screwed if it doesn't work out. So, like he is in a tough spot.
Will kill him if he doesn't figure this out. Yeah.
Worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, I'll take his Toyota. So.
Exactly. There's always the Toyota. Yeah.
Those things have great resale value.
But those have also been the times where, just speaking for myself, but it sounds like for you too, where you come up with the creative ideas. When you really think like, oh my gosh, I've got to really figure out how to make this work. I'm guessing those were the moments where you came up with the idea to partner with your drilling partner to make the offer to the assay lab, which again has saved you guys a huge amount of time this year, because for folks that don't know, the labs are backed up by 6 to 8 weeks right now?
Yeah, the worst I've heard was almost 4 months. But yeah, the average is 6 to 8 weeks, and people are paying a fair penny for it as well. I think it was funny because we went to this lab, and I've known the guys for years. They're a great group, and not only I said I want priority service, and I'd like a 5% discount to what I'm paying right now. And
nice.
And they were like, well, shit, compared to taking out a loan for cash flow, this is the best we have, so it worked out really well for both groups, right? Like they got the cash flow they needed because they were expanding like crazy. Their lab was they were having trouble meeting deadlines because they couldn't hire enough people. So it worked out. We kind of timed it perfectly. And, I think it was kind of, you're right. Like we were kind of in a point. I initially did not think like, oh, I'm obviously going to go give these guys money and stuff. I was just freaking out because I knew that I had a newly public company with no pending news flow, because I had, the drilling took longer than we anticipated. And I was like, oh man, if we don't get results till, the first set of results till January, my stock's going to go to 10 cents.
Yeah.
And, and then all these great people who've invested in us are going to be heading for the hills. And so out of necessity, it kind of was like, okay, well, what can we do to entice these guys to put it on the list? And it worked out really well. I was going to spend the money anyways, it was happening regardless. I just front end loaded it a bit.
Now, and on the drilling side, you guys, again, for folks that maybe are not familiar with your company, you are drilling really deep.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's something that's also very different about what you're doing from maybe others that they're looking at.
Yeah, no.
And are you new technology to do that, or how are you setting yourself apart on that side?
It's not as much new technology. I mean, the ability to drill deep RC holes, because that's our contracts with an RC contractor instead of core. It's been there for a while. I think the thing is, it's really actually, Nevada's a really weird state in that there's a whole lot of dogma.
In many ways.
Yeah, in many ways. But, there's a lot of, you walk into a room.
Geologically speaking, yeah.
And you walk in and it's like, okay, you'll talk to guys and they'll be like, well, that's the wrong rock, kind of thing. No one, everyone knows there's no gold there. And it's like, well, it's a dirty limestone. Who cares if it's not Devonian age? It's Triassic. It's a dirty iron-rich limestone. It's a beautiful host. And that's what happened to Cope. We found it was an existing 3 million ounce mine. We found another 3 million ounces, and Newmont came over and visited, and they said, it's the wrong rocks. And I said, there's been 5 million, there's 3 million of production, 2 million of reserves now, resource. How in the world is it the wrong rocks? Right. It's Triassic, and we all know Triassic isn't a good host. And it's like, so that's, and so that really kind of opened my eyes. It's like, well, geez, like, look at all these old projects that Newmont and Barrick have had.
Everyone has been saying are the wrong rocks.
Same guys have been running those exploration teams for years, right? They've been walking away from it. So we saw it as like, I think the future, the big discoveries in Nevada are only going to come from deep targets. You're not going to see any more 10 million ounce open pits. I strongly believe that, I'd love to be proved wrong, hopefully at one of my projects, but I don't think it's going to happen. And the evidence for that is, look at Barrick. The only discoveries of any merit they've made in the last 15 years have come from stuff that is what we're drilling now. Like, the Gold Strike or the 4 Mile discovery is over 1,000 meters. They're drilling ore grade intercept at 1,500 meters down. That's not a big deal for a place like Red Lake or Timmins or lots of other spots in the world. But for Nevada, that's pretty unheard of. And so we came in and we picked up these land positions that are sitting right beside world-class mine that were always viewed as too deep. And so what the only real difference really is that drilling contract gave us the ability to go after what would be maybe we, what would cost someone, $225,000 to drill that hole. I can do it for 140, 150. So that's really all it was. I mean, it was just purely just an economics thing. Like, it didn't make sense to drill it for juniors, and usually juniors are typically the groups that are willing to take that kind of risk. So no one could ever get over that hump and drill these projects because they were just so risky. So I think the drilling contracts what kind of cracked it open for us.
Well, that's where, again, that innovation on the structure, right, and your openness to a different type of structure and partnership. Innovation isn't always just on the technology side, right? No, and for those who don't know, would you like to explain the difference between RC drilling and core drilling? Yeah, maybe for folks who don't know what you meant by that.
So if you think of it like, think of like an RC drill is almost like a hammer, like a big hammer, and it's just hammering away at the rock. It literally fractures and shatters the rock, and the pressurized air that we pump down the hole forces those rock chips up to surface. So you get a pretty good idea of what you have. You can identify the rock types. If there's gold in it or not. What you don't get is good detail on structure, bedding, blah blah blah. So they both have their positives. Core is an actual tuba rock. It's like think of it like reading a book. Every page, as you look down, this. Sorry, I'm not talking. talking
to your for the listeners. But it's important because we use these terms, right? And we kind of throw them around. And like RC stands for, correct me if I'm wrong, because reverse circulation, right?
Yeah, really heavily used in like Australia as well. Yeah. I think where
cheaper, it's faster and cheaper, right?
I think one of the worst things is when geos nerd out on a project too much, right? Like so many, and they're like, "Why are you drilling RC?" Core is the only way to go because that's the best possible data. And it's like, you're right, that is the best possible data. But I can drill 9. I can drill 9 holes for the same price as 4, with RC. Right. Which increases our, it's just a tool in the toolbox, right? If we make a discovery with RC, I will switch to core to delineate a resource because that is the best quality data.
And then you've proven it to the point where it makes sense to invest more money in doing core.
Every stage of an exploration project, right from staking the ground to defining a resource, is just a de-risking exercise, right? If you break it down to get all the excitement and the a geo standing on the hillside with the wind blowing in his hair, right? Thinking they're like Indiana Jones. Yeah. At the end of the day, you should be treating it like a business, and you should be just trying to hit those hurdle rates. So that's what bringing in the RC contract is it allows us to hit that hurdle rate quicker, which reduces dilution. It means that our shareholders get more news. It means that we're able to, it may seem like a small thing, but it fundamentally changes the company structure and how we hopefully grow, right? Because if we can make a discovery early, we just did at Salina, maybe we can raise money at 10 cents higher valuation or 20 cents higher. That's going to.
Well, I've heard from I can't remember who it was that gave me this advice, but they said, in business of all kinds, it's more important what you say no to than what you say yes to.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're chasing the wrong stuff, you can spend a lot of time and a lot of money saying yes to something that's not worth it. And frankly, like it's the same for drilling. If you can find out faster
Yep.
that there's no gold in that hole, then you can take the rest of that money and put it towards a hole that does have gold in it or might have gold
Absolutely.
in it, right?
And we own 123 square kilometers in Nevada, right? So like those are across 4 projects. That's a huge swath of ground in Nevada. It's not big for Canada or other next to the wood, other areas, but in Nevada, that is, for a junior, that's a very large land position. So we need to fail fast. Like we can't screw around, just continually to chuck money into a project. If it's not showing merit and hitting those hurdles of what we need to see to take it, to get it to that drilling phase, which is the most expensive, then, we're wasting everybody's time and money, right? So I may be out of a job in 2 years because I've burned through everybody's money, but I don't think we will. But the point is
you'll do it fast.
I just don't want to be a lifestyle company. That's the big thing, right? Is there's too many of them. And there's a lot of really good companies doing good work out there, so, we're just hopefully one of them, but we really want to just show shareholders that we will show a return on their investment at a reasonable time frame, right?
Well, I, for one, am really excited to continue following you guys and seeing what you're up to, because I think it's really neat what you're doing. And I'm excited to see what comes out of your drilling results and all the work your team's doing. And I think it's going to be really great for Nevada, frankly. As weird as Nevada can be in many ways. So you guys are doing great work. And just the fact that you've gotten to where you are today with the craziness of 2020 is a cheers moment. So cheers to keeping the lights on and still, pulling it out through this crazy year.
Well, I hope so. I appreciate it. We're hopefully I'll be able to come back on and we can have some more bourbon again. This is the funnest podcast
Absolutely.
to do. Usually I gotta have put my game face on and all this kind of stuff.
We're the bleep it out podcast. Yeah,
that's all right.
All right. Well, Chad, thanks so much for joining us on The Rocks, and we look forward to having you back on sometime soon.
Cheers, Emily. Thanks a lot.
Thank you to our guest and my friend Chad Peters for joining us on this episode of On the Rocks. To learn more about Chad and Ridgeline Minerals, visit ridgelineminerals.com and check them out on LinkedIn at Ridgeline Minerals and on Twitter at RidgelineNV. For more about Prospector, go to prospectorportal.com or check us out on Instagram at ProspectorAI and LinkedIn at Prospector Portal. Thanks for joining us on The Rocks. Until next time, keep your glasses full and your ice cold. Cheers!